I'm Elaine Reyes, and this is America's Now. Tonight, presidential campaign, Hena Cuevas introduces us to Enrique Capriles Radonsky, the magnetic young candidate challenging the mighty Hugo Chavez in a fight for the country's political future.
Well,
it's an uneven battle against a government that's been in power for many years and has no qualms against using public resources to change people's minds.
And then dancing dragons on the streets of Havana. Michael Voss takes us back in time to uncover Cuba's China connection.
Today, only a minority of those involved are descended from Chinese immigrants. But cultural activities like these continue to fascinate many Cubans.
Nosotros tratamos, dentro de lo posible, dentro de la familia, mantener esas costumbres. Es decir, el deporte, ellos practican tai chi, practican wushu. La comida se cocina no parecido, pero tratar de que se asemejen con los ingredientes.
First up, this October, Venezuelans will vote for a new president. Incumbent Hugo Chavez has been in power since 1998. He's running for a fourth election despite suffering from a severe form of cancer. This time, the opposition is standing behind one candidate, a 39-year-old attorney. America's Now contributing correspondent Hena Cuevas went to Venezuela to meet the man looking to break Chavez's winning streak.
Le damos la bienvenida al próximo presidente de todos los venezolanos, Enrique Capriles Radonsky.
The official campaign doesn't start until July 1st, but for someone running against one of the most popular figures in Venezuela, every minute counts. He is Enrique Capriles Radonsky, an attorney not yet 40 years old. He's representing the opposition and will battle it out against President Hugo Chavez on October 7th.
It's a negative thing for a country to have the same person in charge. The people get used to obeying and the leader gets used to ordering. That is where tyranny and the abuse of power come from. It's a little bit of what we are living in our Venezuela.
He's referring to the 14 years Chavez has run the country. The president came into power in 1998 and has easily won each election. A referendum in 2009 amended the Constitution, which now allows for indefinite re-election. But a year ago, 57-year-old Chavez announced he had cancer. He's received numerous treatments in Cuba, but details about his health are shrouded in secrecy, and his public appearances are far and few in between. Still, the government insists Chavez is recovering and that he is running in October. However, some reports indicate the cancer is terminal and that Chavez only has a few more months to live.
For the government to have to substitute their candidate would be without a doubt a weak point, a major weak point. Today we're even, but if the candidate is not the current head of state, none of the leaders who are there can beat me in this election.
So as a competitor, you're actually kind of looking forward to facing Chavez?
I want him to be the candidate. I don't want to face anybody else. I want him to complete his cycle.
In a country as polarized as Venezuela, it's no surprise polls are all over the place. Some have Chavez ahead by only 5 points, others by as much as 30. But every single one still shows him winning over Capriles.
We are going to have a battle of David versus Goliath.
Jose Carrasquero is a professor of political science at Simón Bolívar University. He says Chavez remains an extremely popular figure with a lot of support.
I believe that the government is going to play with Chavez until the end. Basically because they know that Chavez is the only candidate that can beat Capriles at this moment.
If he is not the candidate, do you think the government would still win?
When you change Chavez and put other candidates, Capriles beat those candidates. And for that reason, the government is playing hard. They are playing with Chavez until the end.
But Capriles counters that he has never lost an election. Born of a wealthy family, he began his political career at age 26, becoming the youngest member of the Venezuelan parliament. He's also been a mayor and is now the governor of the state of Miranda, with a population of over 2.5 million people. He's mindful of the image he must project, of identifying with the poor who are among Chavez's biggest supporters instead of with the elites. We joined him on the road, and even though Capriles speaks fluent English, he politely declined, preferring to answer our questions in Spanish.
Well, it's an uneven battle against a government that has been in power for many years and has no qualms against using public resources to change people's minds, for advertising, to use the entire state apparatus for a political party, TV, radio, and the propaganda machine. It's an uneven battle from that point of view, but I'm used to uneven battle.
He argues the socialist policies of the Chavez government haven't provided real solutions to the poverty the country faces. He says government subsidies and handouts have done more harm than good.
The condition of poverty changes not when you receive money to live, but when you have a social program that helps you, that shelters you, but that also provides all of the conditions for you to have a job and to become independent.
Capriles' main concern is dealing with the violence that's gripping Venezuela. A 2009 government report indicated that during Chavez's tenure, murders have nearly tripled, making Venezuela the murder capital of South America.
But the truth is, the situation has been going on for about 12, 13, 14 years, and you can't change things overnight.
I disagree. There are short, medium, and long-term measures. The effect education may have will take longer. Providing employment will also have a delayed effect. But in order for the judicial branch to work, we don't need a lot of time. Also, taking guns away from those who are armed doesn't take a lot of time.
He says the military is key to curbing the problem.
I think the armed forces have to be incorporated into a peace process. Brazil did it and was successful. Venezuela can also do it.
Reducing the high crime rate and improving people's sense of public safety is the #1 priority. But it's also about restoring confidence in the economy, which has suffered greatly in the past 14 years. Whoever becomes president needs to attract foreign investors using Venezuela's most valuable natural resource, its oil.
Venezuela is the 5th largest oil-producing country in the world and has the biggest oil reserves outside the Middle East. Capriles says he wants to use the oil to stimulate growth in other areas to jumpstart investments.
But I think the oil industry is strategic in attaining that goal, to make sure oil is the motor to diversify the Venezuelan economy.
For Carrasquero, the key also lies in political stability.
If we can do that, we're going to have a huge investment in Venezuela, basically because we have a potential of development that is, I believe, the biggest in all Latin America.
But those who oppose Capriles say he represents a return to the old Venezuela, where only the elite wealthy few rule the country. Not so, says a former Chavez supporter. Vladimir Villegas is a journalist who hosts a daily radio talk show. He's held various positions within the Chavez government, including stints as ambassador, as well as vice minister of foreign relations. Since 2007, he's become highly critical of the government. He says he believes in the revolution, having co-sponsored the reformed constitution, but disagrees with the way Chavez is operating.
The government began assuming an authoritarian position, disregarding the institutions. They even started backing away from the constitution, and personally, I couldn't accept that.
He says today's opposition includes those who, like him, used to support Chavez but are now looking for a change.
It's not about returning to the past. It's about jumping into the future, going to the future, building the Venezuela that all Venezuelans have dreamed of.
In a way, Capriles is not related to the past. It's not like talking about all politicians in Venezuela. Capriles represents a new way of doing politics.
But the question looming is what happens if Chavez is too ill to run and complete another 6-year term. For Carrasquero, the government is being irresponsible in its insistence that Chavez be the candidate.
You know that President Chavez has a cancer, that the cancer has spare all around his body, and he's going to die sooner or later. So you are playing you are gambling with that.
A lot of voters would be unsure, and they're going to be asking themselves what's going to happen if the president wins the election and 3-4 months later he has to step down. Who will follow? Who will he leave behind? How are we going to handle that in Venezuela?
So far, Chavez has limited his public appearances, communicating mostly through Twitter, further fueling rumors that he isn't well enough to campaign. But in late May, in a televised meeting with his cabinet, Chavez emphatically told the opposition they will lose.
Van a ser derrotados por toda la línea. La derrota que le vamos a dar no tiene precedentes en la historia política de este país.
He also made a rare public appearance during a visit with a delegation from Belarus. It only lasted 15 minutes, and he didn't take any questions.
The problem is that people will want to see Chavez campaigning. It's not the same having a 39-year-old candidate running all around the country, promising to do things to fix problems in Venezuela, and having a candidate giving his speech through TV or using the media to proceed with his campaign.
Despite the criticism, even his harshest opponents give Chavez credit for getting Venezuelans interested and involved in politics, but most importantly, for bringing the issue of poverty to the forefront.
Pero para mí no es suficiente. Para los venezolanos no es suficiente.
But for me, that's not enough. For Venezuelans, it's not enough to identify the problem, talk about it, give it an identity. It's about solving the existing problems.
Se trata de solucionar el problema, los problemas que hay.
Only time will tell if Chavez's controversial ideas survive without his larger-than-life persona at the helm. 13 years ago, it was Capriles, as vice president of the Congress, who welcomed Hugo Chavez to the government. This election will determine whether the people want to continue with the socialist revolution he started, or if they want to give a chance to a new generation, promising to blend the old with the new.
Hena Cuevas joins us now from Lima, Peru, fresh off the heels of her interview with Enrique Capriles in Caracas. Hena, thank you for that report and welcome.
Thank you, Elaine.
And tell us more about the violence occurring in Venezuela. Why is it the murder capital of the world, and are the cartels playing a role?
Well, it was interesting because during our visit, every single person I met, from the cab driver to the person sitting next to me on the airplane, mentioned that the violence and the crime was really one of the most difficult parts about living in Venezuela. A recent report indicated that there were 19,000 murders last year, which adds up to about over 50 a day. And the truth is, there is some influence from the drug cartels, as Colombia, who is neighboring Venezuela, as they have cracked down on the drug trafficking, some of it has spilled over to Venezuela. But a lot of analysts are saying that it has to do with the level of impunity. A lot of the crimes actually go unpunished. So it is top priority in this election, and it will definitely be on the minds of voters as they go to the polls.
Well, if elected, what would Capriles do to counter the violence?
Well, he would do something similar to what the Chavez government is doing. Late last year, they organized a special police force that is now comprised of about 4,000 troops that are now patrolling the streets. What Capriles mentioned is that he is thinking about incorporating the armed forces as well. He cited the example of Brazil, which last year sent some troops into some of the most dangerous portions of Brazil to help try and eliminate this problem. So Capriles is not discounting using the armed forces to try and curb this problem, which is very, very serious in Venezuela at the moment.
Let's turn to the economic situation in Venezuela. What would Capriles do to handle the economic situation there? Would it be difficult for him to wean the Venezuelan people off the social programs that Chavez instilled and started?
Well, one of the key elements in Chavez's government has been that element of social inclusion, of these very popular social programs to try and alleviate some of the poverty that has existed in Venezuela. Capriles is aware of that, and he says that he will continue with the social programs. He didn't specify which ones he would keep.
Let's turn to oil. How important is oil to Venezuela's future?
Well, Venezuela is the 5th largest oil-producing country in the world, and it has reserves, the largest reserves outside of the Middle East. So oil is key to their economic success. Capriles mentioned expanding the countries that are who actually purchase oil from Venezuela, one of those being China. Since 2005, PDVSA, the state-run oil company, opened offices in China. The whole idea is to include more countries and sell the petroleum to a greater number of people. At this point, Venezuela exports about 65% to the United States, and what they want to do is diversify that. And Chavez had indicated that he wanted to triple the number of tankers, oil tankers, off the coast of China to be able to increase and be able to help out with the high demand that China has at the moment for energy.
Anna, can you talk more about Capriles as a person? How is he being received on the campaign trail at the moment? And, he's a single guy. How is that playing out with the people of Venezuela?
Well, he's 39 years old, and even though Chavez is by no means old, he's only 57, the comparison of the age has more to do with Chavez's health. Capriles has a very energetic, very outgoing campaign style that in a lot of ways emulates Hugo Chavez. He has a program called Casa por Casa, house by house, where he actually goes literally house to house, talking to people, asking what it is that they need.
What happens if Chavez doesn't survive to make the election?
Well, that is another million-dollar question, because it's not just Chavez making it all the way to October, but being strong enough to complete another 6-year term. Now, what one of the analysts was telling me is that according to the Venezuelan Constitution, and this is something that's going to be a huge test to the Constitution, is that if Chavez doesn't make it past the elections, and let's say he's elected, and in the first 4 years he passes away or he steps down because he isn't strong enough to complete it, the government would have 30 days to call for new elections.
Okay, Hena Cuevas, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you, Elaine.
This week, Enrique Capriles formally stepped down from his post as state governor in Venezuela to dedicate all his time to the presidential campaign. Hugo Chavez will officially launch his re-election bid early this week in a personal appearance. America has now requested an interview with President Chavez to include in this broadcast, but his staff respectfully declined, telling us it's, quote, highly unlikely at this time.